Hello, and welcome back to Counter Stories, the MCSR Podcast. I'm your host and MCSR Digital Director, Adam Middleton. If you've joined us before, you know that MCSR mobilizes the infinite potential of boys and men as catalysts for positive change through our transformational youth development programs, pioneering trainings and consulting services, and acclaimed multimedia public education initiatives. Much of our work centers around understanding dominant stories of masculinity and womanhood and replacing those with counter stories, especially through our youth development programs, the Men of Strength or MOST Club, and the Women Inspiring Strength and Empowerment or WISE Club. We believe that while young people are bombarded daily with negative, harmful, and limiting messages about the dominant story, counter stories are narratives that resist those values and expectations and are the foundation for developing healthier personal identities open to more diverse expressions and actions. And that's where we get Counter Stories Productions, our signature arts initiative, including this podcast, which builds on that work to engage young people as change makers, leaders, and allies in preventing and ending violence. By encouraging and empowering the young people and their creativity, establishing avenues for sharing their lived experiences, and more. Now, for today's episode, I'm really excited to have a one-on-one conversation with Joshua Bailey, a veteran MOST Club member from Ballou High School here in Washington, D.C. We're going to discuss so much: healthy masculinity in sports, what can make the dominant story so popular, and of course, the personal stories of his time in MOST Club, what he's taken from the club with him into adulthood, and why he still does this work today as a community education manager for MCSR. Take a listen. Well, all right. Hello, Josh.
Hello, Adam. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Cool. Well, we're going to have some fun. Full disclosure, Josh and I have known each other for at least 10 years. So there'll be a little bit of jostling, but all in fun. I will take it easy on you.
Please do.
Really excited to talk to you today, obviously, for all the work that you've done with MCSR and just who you are as a person. So I'd like to open with just an opportunity to share who you are. No rules, whatever you want to tell us. Well, there is one rule. You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Okay. Are you ready? Josh Bailey in 2 minutes.
Yeah, Josh Bailey, native Washingtonian, born and raised in Washington, D.C., specifically Southeast D.C. A lover of all things music, food, fun, and healthy masculinity. Is one of the reasons and a part of the conversations that we're here today. But I just truly believe as a person that, life is about making meaningful connections and just being your best self and encouraging others to do the same always. So I think that in a short, that's in 2 minute version. I'll say that's what Josh Bailey is.
Okay, leaving a little time on the clock.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Well, welcome again to Counter Stories, the MCSR podcast. And I think it's natural to ask you, what does a counter story mean to you?
Yeah. A counter story to me, it's an alternative to what we call at MCSR, the dominant stories of masculinity, or dominant stories as a whole, which represents the societal view of expectations that are placed on individuals and how we should show up in the world. And a counter story to me represents a way out, or a way to figure out how do you become your most authentic self in efforts to just be a complete human being, not confined by any specific narratives or ideas, but you're able to kind of fine tune and develop into the person that is most authentic to who you are. Mm-hmm. That's what I believe a counter story is.
And then to experience like the freedom within those diverse open expressions. You are a veteran member of the Men of Strength Club, which I'm sure is where you first encountered the idea of a counter story. Obviously, I also, being a veteran member of the MOST Club, have a great, deep understanding, as do many of our listeners. But I always like to know, because the experience of the MOST Club is so personal and it's so individual, if I'd never heard of primary violence prevention or youth development or MOST Club or MCSR, of any of that stuff, how would you describe the Men of Strength Club to me? And I'm going to tip the hand a little bit and say that you have the opportunity to primarily explain this in the context of your experience in the club as a veteran, but you've also done some work for us as a facilitator. So you probably have two lenses on this question, but I'll let you take whatever stance you'd like.
Yeah, simply put, the MOST Club from my personal perspective, and what its intention is to be a safer space for young men, starting off at middle age and even through college, to come and have conversations about how do we as men understand this concept of masculinity. Like, what is it? That's pretty much the foundation where we start, and we explore the different attitudes and behaviors, and sometimes the assumptions around masculinity that can be harmful. And the Most Club is a space where we empower and encourage men to be strong and use their strength without being violent. So have the capacity to be physically strong or mentally strong, and also have the capacity to express empathy, love, and value connections with your peers in all forms of interpersonal relationships, right? So the Most Club is a space where, if I go from a personal perspective, where I was able to explore those options, because just living in the world prior to Most Club, it just felt like my life was just like confined by this rigid framework of the dominant story of masculinity that, pushes men to think that you have to do it alone, or there's no sense of community. You have to be this particular way, and there are no alternatives. But the Most Club is a space where I was like, oh man, y'all want to be that too? Like, y'all don't want to go? Yeah. Y'all don't just want to be in this dominant story framework, or just existing? Kind of going with the flow.
Yeah.
So for me, it was refreshing to be in a space where we could have just genuine conversations, say some things that may not have been able to been shared outside of that space, because we just had that trust and that bond amongst each other to really just be curious, to be open, and to be honest about, our views of masculinity, the things that we may have misunderstood about it or not understood at all, and had the opportunity to learn, right? So I think the biggest thing within the Most Club, it's a learning environment, a lifelong learning environment for men as on their journey as they develop into the healthy man we hope they would like to be.
Yeah. Yeah. In the 22, 23 years of the Most Club, we've helped thousands of young men. Some of them are exposed to a whole new world. Many of us are, but I think there are degrees to which that exposure or where they're starting from and how they grow in that lifelong learning opportunity that is the club. But, some folks, Neil, our executive director, he says this about me as well, but I've heard him say this about you. Josh was going to be okay. Josh was going to grow up to be a good man, right? So I'm curious, even from someone who was going to be okay, someone who was going to be who they are with or without the Most Club, could you say specifically what in your description was most additive about it? What is it that you think is a part of your life today that would not have been without the Most Club?
Yeah, I think it's the gendered lens that it provides. I think ideally, I was raised to understand, right from wrong, good and bad, and, how not to harm people physically, maybe. But the Most Club helped me to see things in the perspective of a gendered lens that, I may have not had such a strong understanding of without being a part of the club. Because, we talked about our personal relationships with, the girlfriends we may have had, but even our friends, period, to understand how, like, our actions have consequences and also reactions. And those were things that, as I was developing as a young man, that I felt like, because of the stigma, you can't talk to your parents about these kind of things, you feel like you can't talk to really anyone about it. But the Most Club was a space where I was just able to really understand. I was like, man, I'm dating this girl and I don't really understand like how to date, as a young person, and to have a space amongst young men to even talk through that and hear like their challenges with navigating relationships, either, personal or romantic. It was just encouraging, and like we learned from each other's experience in regards to that gender lens of Most Club. I just really appreciate that, and that's something that I truly believed helped me to really have healthier relationships, like I said, either romantic or just personal.
Yeah. No, that was the cool thing about the club for me too. There may have been a session where I didn't directly speak up, but so many of the experiences were so similar and so shared that someone bringing it up for themselves and whatever response or guidance, that they got could be applied to some of my own situations. And there was just like a safety, like the shared safety and the similarity and just, I don't know, as someone who, was going to be who they were, I think of, my years in the club as just a really, really safe, important space to say things that, weren't always popular.
Right.
But it was safe and it was healthy. And I think that we were all able to grow in specific ways because we were willing to say what we thought, even if we were unsure.
Yeah. And even be challenged.
And
have healthy debates around, our difference of opinion. And I think that's important as young men, because, a lot of times, how we resolve conflict as men or from the dominant story perspective is like, there's that assertion of like dominance or, you have to prove that, no, I'm more manly than you. But we were able to create spaces where, we could have conversations and disagree and still be friends afterwards, So I always thought that was unique because it really shows the difference in the environment of what the school or community may have been and what the intention of most club was, even after you left that space. So.
Yeah. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Josh, now that I can tell that you're comfortable, I get to grill you. So you are in the hot seat.
Oh, man.
Okay. Counter Stories is, this is like a prank that we're playing on you this whole time. No. Obviously, we have so much to learn about Josh Bailey, the man. So thrilled to be in conversation with you. And I've just come up with a couple questions that I think will really unpack at the subject matter level, just the way that you move about the world and things that you've intentionally but subconsciously taken with you because you've been working with us for so long. And I just think you have a lot to share and you're a good person.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to unpack that. Starting with, there's so much you've learned, I'm sure, both learned and taught about healthy masculinity in your role at the organization and just as a person. I'm curious, taking all that together, how do you navigate relationships, friendships, and other interpersonal connections in the present day?
Yeah. I just truly believe in just leading from a place or living from a place of humanity and love, always. No matter how it may be received or interpreted, I always just believe in my intention of, one, in terms of facilitation, leaving people better than we found them. Going to a space and ensuring that I was very intentional about the information that was being shared, as well as building in the connection, building a relationship and establishing a connection with that audience, or if it's, whether it's young men or professionals or anyone, community, just really being intentional and making sure that I always acknowledge the humanity in the room, and I just truly believe that a lot of times within society today, a lot of people's humanity isn't always recognized because of, a variety of things. It could be, the indirect communication as relates to social media or media in general. But I just truly believe in healthy human connection and always just wanted to embody that and be someone that can be an example of what healthy masculinity can look like. And I'm not perfect, but truly perceiving the importance of having that role, be role modeled every day, because, I grew up in Southeast DC and, we a lot of times, there's a lot of stigma around that community. And even when I tell people I'm from there, they're like, what, you're from there? I'm like, yeah, like, you don't act like them. What are we supposed to act like? We're all human beings, right? Like, no, like, so even representing my community, I just truly believe in just leading from a place of love, humanity, and just really healthy human connection.
Yeah. Where do you find the motivation, though, even when it's hard, right? Leading with love, we understand what right looks like, but how do you do it? Where do you find the motivation, even when it's hard? Why choose the counter story?
Yeah, I mean, as hard as it is to reflect daily and challenge yourself, there's a lot of reward in it too. You know, it's like, you know, you want to go to the gym because you want the results. You know, so it's like I exemplify the counter story, or I truly embody this concept of healthy masculinity because the results. You know, we believe in the social ecological model. It's like a framework for prevention. You know, it starts with the individual, and as that individual has really processed and really kind of prescribed to the notions or understanding of healthy masculinity, like it's proven that, you know, it would spew out or kind of go into your relationships with people, then your community, then society. So it's like that ripple effect of positivity or goodness, right?
Yeah.
So it's like infectious in a way. Like, you know, I've been in spaces where, you know, just saying thank you and smiling at someone changed the course of their day. They would just say, you just don't know how much I just needed to hear that or just to see you smile. And, you know, I don't even think twice of it because that's just who I am. You know, I just believe in putting that goodness back in society. And also believe in the law of reciprocity. You know, what you put into the world is what you get out. Yeah. So I believe in, you know, putting the good things or the positivity because I would like to receive that in return. Yeah. And even when it's hard, you know, that's when you have to have the accountability of self. It's like, we may didn't hit every mark today, but we hit some, and let's just do better tomorrow. So it's really, I think it starts with accountability to oneself to really be committed to that process of change and even continued learning. Yeah.
Growing up, did you have examples? Like where did you pull the sense of what right looks like? Healthy masculinity, you know, being a man, being courageous, being kind, the law of reciprocity. Where does that originate?
Yeah, I truly believe I was blessed. Okay. I was blessed to have very strong men, but very empathic, very genuine, loving, and caring men in my life. You know, so I had examples of healthy masculinity in my life, and I didn't even know it because it was just who they were. They were just loving individuals that cared about me so much that, you know, they wanted the best for me always. And, you know, I was privileged to have my grandfather, who was just, you know, the epitome of the man that I wanted to be. And I believe I'm still aspiring to be him to this day. His just sincere love for me and my siblings and his care, you know, even, you know, we had challenges in our relationship, you know, he would challenge me to always be my best self, but always, you know, exemplify his love for me through his actions. You know, like every Saturday morning, you know, he would get up early and make us breakfast. And, you know, like, you know, he made the best pancakes. You know, even to this day, I'm still trying to master the recipe. I still can't. But, you know, he was just the man, you know, he was just the man. And like, he normalized just, for me, being able to express my emotions, you know, because he would just always talk to me and share his expectations for me. And a lot of times he would be so moved to it, he would even cry about sharing these. I'm like, man, why are you crying? You sad? Like, no, it was really just because the genuine love that he had for me and the best that he wanted for me. Wow. So I would say I've been really blessed to have very positive and strong men in my life that really reared me to be a loving and caring man, but also strong too. So I'm just really blessed in that regard. Like, you know, like I said, my grandfather, rest in peace, my pastor. He was a huge figure and mentor to me growing up. My family was big into the faith. So that was something that really, I believe, kept me grounded as well. But, you know, my pastor, my godfather, my uncles, you know, even to this day, you know, my colleagues, mentors that I have. So I was just really blessed to have these examples early on in my life, and which made me kind of getting into this work a bit easier because, like, I know that, like, you know, this framework of the dominant story isn't it. Like, this can't be it because I had the examples in my life. I saw what the goodness was, you know, having those healthy relationships and treating people with respect and being kind. So I was like, yeah, this seems like a trick. Like, I don't think this is it. And when I found the Most Club, it was just like, it kind of confirmed it for me because it reinforced all those ideas in a much more intentional way. So,
yeah. that just makes me think, you have these examples. So it's connecting for me that even without the language, you had the demonstrations. Right. And you now have the opportunity, because there are people we know who don't have right. that in their lives. Do you feel a responsibility to now be the demonstration, to be maybe you are the man in someone's life who is a representation of the counter story?
Yeah, I think that goes back to your question about, like, even when it's hard, mm-hmm. like, how do we show up mm-hmm. and still be that example, you know? And a part of that is that, you know, understanding that the communities that we serve, you know, may not have those examples of healthy men or positive men, mm-hmm. or they may not be able to identify because, you know, they want to be someone else. Mm-hmm. You know, they want to be the men that's in the media mm-hmm. that has all the flashy things mm-hmm. and the shiny bright things, to where the men, the healthy and the positive men that are in their lives are being overlooked, right? Because the dominant story is more attractive. That lifestyle is more attractive. And just going back to your question now, like, yeah, I do feel a responsibility for that. To really be that example every day, no matter what community I'm serving. You know, even to this day, it's amazing that, you know, I can't even go get like Korean barbecue in DC or anywhere in the DMV without running to either someone that I've trained, or more specifically, participants and veteran members of the Men of Strength Club. Mm-hmm. You know, they're working at the Korean barbecue spot. Mm-hmm. They're working on Capitol Hill. Mm-hmm. You know, they're working, you know, in spaces like this. You know, they're in different spaces in life. They're the musicians and all that kind of stuff. When I'm going to concerts, they're there. Yeah. Some of them were even the musicians playing at the concert. Wow. You know, so it's like, I think it goes back to that social ecological model, to where, like, you know, how it started with me or them, and, you know, how that spread into community and society, to where, like, you know, I'm in different spaces and I see them. You know, even, you know, them going to college and coming back and hearing their stories as relates to them having moments of, like, bystander intervention, mm-hmm. like how they intervene to prevent mm-hmm. Various forms of harm from occurring to others on campus. You know, they're even able to connect the dots outside of the space, and that's really when you know you've done the work, or you truly were an example, when they can come back and identify the spaces that they're in, where the dominant story was present, and they felt capable. They felt like they had the tools to act. Yeah. To act appropriately and safely. So I think, to answer your question, like, yeah, I do feel that responsibility to always try my best to be an example. And like you said, it's hard. It is truly hard. Yeah. This work is hard, but it's possible. And I believe that as we are consistent in doing so, we'll see a lot of change. Yeah.
Well, I love what you said about them finding the responsibility outside of the space, because, you know, the club has its limits in terms of the dosage, right. But the goal is that these young men find and use their strength, you know, without being violent, throughout their lives and, right. and outside of the space, and then the ripple effect, you know, calling back to our new logo, the ripple effect of that goodness, right? Yeah. That's not to say that the dominant story isn't popular. Right. I mean, omnipresent. I mean, it's really out there. Yeah. What in your view makes it so popular? Why are we in the position that we're in to do the work that we do? We do great work, you know, but every day we're confronting the dominant story. There are recent voices, you know, in media and social media who would have, because of their popularity, you know, would have us convinced that the dominant story is this new thing, right? There's this new opportunity that boys and young men are choosing, when in fact we know it's existed for generations. How is it, in your view, because this is a big question, I'm just curious, your perspective, how is it so enduring and so popular?
I think it's for some, it can be seen as a safe space to exist in, right? Because, like I said, the lack of alternatives to it, or the lack of awareness to the alternatives, can make it seem safe. You know, it is a community, you know, and, you know, living within that framework can cause you to just have very, how can I say this? Very specific ideals, I guess, that limits your ability to choose, you know, to where you don't see any alternatives. So I just think that, you know, for some men that may exist within that framework or are choosing to exist within that framework, it can be seen as safe, and going against the norm or the dominant story can be difficult if you don't feel equipped to do so.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's like if you can't beat them, join them in a sense, or just stick with them.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to seem like an outcast or you don't want to seem less than.
Yeah.
So you choose to remain confined in that narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny when you were talking about your grandfather, your pastor, other examples, it made me think of, you can't be what you can't see, right? But
exactly.
The same thing might apply on the other side with the dominant story, right? Like you can't be what you can't see, and
that's right.
There is a safety. I do think it prevents you from being an outcast, and okay, that resonates.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. I want to talk a little bit about your experience, of course, in the club, but also as a community education manager, because you're in the community every day. You're training folks across the country, locally, and I wanted to ask you. Have you, witnessed recently any aha moments that make you feel like, yes, the work is connecting. I just reached somebody. But I also fully understand that one of the greatest things about our organization, our work, is that it's evolving every day. We're not teaching the same way we did 20 years ago. And I can imagine that there are those lifelong learning moments for you. So the question may not even be an aha moment that you witnessed, but an aha moment that you have for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it was as recent as 2 months ago when we were working with the university, and we were working with their athletic department. And I guess I'll share this story first before I go into that.
Okay.
But I've never really participated in sports just because of this one moment. So in high school, I remember being a freshman. And, kind of getting acclimated to that new environment with me and my friends. So, we would be, just around the school, kind of hanging out, getting the lay of the land. And I noticed this person was following me. Or he would just be in the same spaces that I was in. And I was like, who is this person? Like, I didn't know who this person was, but they would just consistently show up. And so as time progressed throughout my freshman year, he happened to be the football coach. And, he approached me and was like, man, you should really just come and be a part of the football team. There's so many benefits. You get the girls, you get gear, you get all these privileges and all these things. And I just didn't want to because of that approach. It didn't feel genuine. It was like, I want you to come work for me, and this is what you can get. Opposed to this is what I can teach you, or this is what you will gain of being a part of this program. And so like that moment, I think really deterred me from sports because of like that perspective.
Yeah, he almost made the dominant story like a selling point.
Right.
Yeah, thinking that he knew his audience.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I said, I mean, I've had these healthy men in my life, so I was like, I want to be more like that. I want to be more like that. I believe in that. I want to invest my time in becoming that. And so as time progressed, after having that experience, it kind of like just turned me off from sports as a whole. I was like, I'm not really looking into that. But I was thankful for the Most Club because it empowered me to be who I truly wanted to be, which was aspire to be, a musician or, a cook, the things that were really, I was really passionate about, but wasn't seen as the norm amongst men. And I said that to say this in regards to the university we work with. I was privileged to co-facilitate some workshops with the entire athletic department. And really had a chance to kind of see beyond the court, what that sense of team means and what it is made of. And it just really, for me, was an aha moment, but really challenged my perspective or my dominant stories around athletes, right? Because a lot of times all we see is, from the tip off to, the end of the shot clock. And that's all we know.
Yeah.
Opposed to, what society has, the narratives that society has created around athletes. And, during this time, that time we spent with those athletes, man, I just learned so much. How what that team meant to them. It was their community. And I saw that it wasn't, a lot of what is being shared around athletes. It was a very intimate space where they shared the challenges and they worked through some of the challenges that they were experiencing on their campus and just in life in general. But to know that they had a community of men that had their back in a much healthier way. Not talking about you fight one of us, you fight all, but it was more like, no, we all working through everything together. It went beyond just the relationship as a teammate. It was more of a brotherhood. And I was just really, really just moved by that, because I was like, wow, man, I wish I had this example in high school, because I probably would have joined many teams, because I believe in that. I believe in that sense of community and healthy, even relationships amongst men, how we interact, that sense of brotherhood. So that was one recently, that just really helped me to just shift my perspective in working with different and diverse groups of men to really challenge my biases and preconceived notions and expectations that I may have learned, through the course of my life, and really just allow that to take a back seat and allow, this community to teach me that I may not know a lot about. Yeah. So, that was one recently that just really challenged me and moved me, and then really encouraged me to want to learn more about athletes and the team dynamics and, just sports as a whole.
Wow. What ironic full circle almost. Organized sports, a team sport kind of pushed you away. The dominant story of team sports pushed you away, which led you to the Most Club, which was obviously a very enriching experience. Right. And then being a part of MCSR put you back in a situation to be around organized sports, obviously in a teaching role, in a facilitating role, bringing something to that campus, but also taking just as much yourself and being able to see, wow, there are counter stories within athletics, right?
Yeah. Wow. That was, wow, when you put it like that, wow, man, it's really full circle. Yeah. It's true. It's true. So yeah, I'm very thankful for that. Yeah. I'm very thankful because that challenges me as I even, interact with my, nephew who plays sports, to have more compassion and care and love for him around that, because, I want to support him and his development in that space. So yeah, it's just a great experience. I'm thankful for it.
You can really see what it means to them, like what you mentioned about supporting each other off the court. It's really, I love the athletics work that we do. Yeah. And I know that, you've spoken to me previously about some of the hesitations you had in doing it, given the biases that you had, but being willing to check those and learn and support many organizations across the country.
Yeah. I mean, I think that goes to the lifelong learning aspect of our work. You know, we have to, if we don't, we'll become antiquated. Yeah.
Cool. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back with more from Josh. Welcome back to Counter Stories, the MCSR podcast. Still so pleased to be sitting here with Josh Bailey, veteran Most Club member and MCSR community education manager. I want to pick up our conversation with some dominant stories as well as healthy masculinity in the news. I love the conversation we were having about athletics and sports, because I'd like to start with something I saw recently from Deion Sanders, Coach Prime. He was addressing his team and the women's staff that support that team as we, head into Sexual Assault Awareness Month. It felt like a really good overlap of leadership, of addressing gender dynamics. And I'd be curious, with your background, the work that you actively do with athletics, and just some of the relationship that you've had with sports. I'd love to have a conversation about that. So let's take a listen. Okay.
One thing that I don't condone, Jennifer, come on. One thing that I don't condone is disrespect for a woman and calling a woman out of her name. So when you pass by these beautiful young women, I don't know if they grace you to call them by their name or their type, you find out. To not be mistaken, I would say ma'am, until they check you and say I'm not that old, okay? But be courteous, be gracious, and be polite. And if there's any dysfunction or obstruction with your girlfriend, fiance, or whoever, with any abuse, that's it. It's over. Don't call me, don't have your mama call me, don't call Rick. It's a wrap. You understand that? We're going to respect our women wholeheartedly. Thank you, ladies.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let you talk. I have thoughts, but I'm gonna let you talk. What do you make of that?
I think it's just, that's an example of the work that has been done for so long as it relates to healthy masculinity, even in the sports realm. Like I said, you know, my view was skewed from a very young time as a young man, and just to really see how, you know, we believe in our work with athletes and professionals in the sports realm that the tone starts at the top, right? So that tone starts with the coach. You know, if the coach doesn't have, you know, these healthy morals and views personally, as it relates to relationships with women or in general relationships, period, you know, that's going to spew into the team. So I just believe for Coach Prime to set that standard in regards to how do you, and it's funny because they're a part of their team in a sense. They don't play the game, but they're on the staff, which they have to work with and interact on a consistent basis. So to see that, you know, from the jump, he's setting a standard and a tone with the players to, you know, this is our expectation as relates to how we engage with our colleagues, you know, treating them with respect. And vice versa, I believe that they're going to treat them with that same respect and care. Yeah. So just really, I think it just speaks to the overall work that is being done within athletics and coaching, to where, like, you know, coaches, I'm seeing more coaches that we've worked with in the past few months and years that are truly not only invested in their development as athletes, but as men. Yeah. Right. Because, and that's kind of the setup. You know, a lot of times some programs may just only be invested to them as the athlete. But when they take the jersey off and take the helmet off, you know, they still got to be who they are. Yeah. And they still got to navigate their lives in those relationships. So it just makes sense. And I'm just excited to see that, you know, not only are, you know, coaches focusing on the exterior, but the interior as well. So.
Yeah, I love it. It felt like healthy masculinity at work, healthy masculinity in the workplace, both with regard for the team. But he also mentioned, you know, interpartner relationships. Right. Just a really, you know, bold stance, like you said, coming from the top, setting the proper expectation. It's just important. It's important, and it's good not only that it happened, but it was also good that, you know, I like to say a tree falls in the wood, but no one hears it. You know, does it happen? The intent to put that on social so that other people can see that this is how he leads. I just thought it was a good moment of healthy masculinity at work. Yeah. Okay. What other, you know, you're in this work. Are there other examples? Like, have you seen healthy masculinity or dominant stories in the news in a way recently that caught your attention? One that comes to mind for me, for example, is like just all of the chatter around the premiere of Creed 3 and not just the film, but the relationship between the actors, Michael B. Jordan and Jonathan Majors. It seems there was a particular photo, for example, that they shot for the New York Times that I think challenged some people's notions of what a man-to-man friendship looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that too. I saw that image, and, you know, I didn't think nothing of it. I think because I do this work, you know. But I can see how, like, you know, people with that dominant story of view can view that as less than them being less than a real man. But, you know, the good thing about the counter story, and even the courage that it took to even publish a photo like that, for them to say, like, no, this is my brother, this is my friend, and I want my friendship to be displayed in this way, and that doesn't make me any less of a man. Yeah. Right? The courage that it takes to do that. Yeah. And not care about what society says. That's the counter story. Yeah. That's the counter story. To be your authentic self and to have authentic, healthy relationships with people, regardless of what the outcomes or response is. Like, that's the counter story. To be okay with that. To show up in the world and be okay with who you are. Yeah. and not really be swayed or like moved by the response of people that may have not done the work on themselves.
Yeah.
So that's the counter story. I would shout out to those brothers.
Yeah.
I would just encourage them to continue the same, man. Like, we need more examples of men in the world that can show up and be themselves and not be confined by the opinions of others.
Yeah.
So I would just really, big ups to them.
Yeah. And it was almost a reflection of like how the chains move, like how the expectation of like what's man enough.
Yeah.
Because on the surface, these are two men promoting a boxing film,
right,
in incredible shape, and even they can fall, prey to some outdated ideas about how men are supposed to express their love for each other.
Yeah.
So big ups to them for not taking the bait and being willing to say that this is who we are for each other.
Yeah.
Just hearing men express their loves and showing their love for each other.
Yeah.
Which sounds a lot like your story, just something that you were privileged and blessed to grow up with from the beginning.
Yeah, and I also saying this, even my relationships with like my brothers, we just say "I love you, man" more often now. Rest in peace to my pops. Us losing our dad brought us together closer, and to where we just really embrace each other more and just really commit to spending more time with each other and just checking in, because it's important. As men, we need community. The idea of the island of me is just so unfortunate.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful to have community in that way and to be able to express my love to my brothers and the different friends and men in my life in such an authentic way. So, like I said, just shout out to those brothers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We'll take one last break and then we'll close out with Josh Bailey. See you in a moment. All right, we're back. We're going to close out with Josh Bailey. Josh Bailey, this is probably the easiest question that you'll have faced on this day. I just like to ask folks who are in this work, either for the organization, outside of the organization, for a cherished memory. What do you take with you? What sticks? Recent, not recent? When you think about just how this experience has been, what it is that you continue to learn, what cherished memory comes to mind to close out this conversation?
Yeah, I think the memory of like the spark that started the passion that led me into this work was, I remember being in Most Club and just, kind of just, it was like the session was going on. It was happening. And my facilitator at the time, Jason Page, who is now the Senior Director of National Programs, was just facilitating the club. And I was kind of like winning my own. I was like, man, I want to do this. Like, I want to do this work. I want to be like Mr. J. Like, I want to be like Jason. Yeah. I want to do this work. So I
also want to be like Jason.
Shout out to Jason Page. But yeah, that's something that I'm always just reminded of, even like when it gets tough. And I can't even tell you how many times when I was having a rough day where I would just run into a veteran Most Club member. And all of the frustration or just dysfunction of the day just melted away because of all the memories that just kind of flooded my brain, just, from just interacting with that young person. It's like, oh man, yeah. And now they're grown and they have kids. I'm like, man, what? It's like, what's going on? How did this happen? But I would say the memory that always sticks with me is just that, the spark that really pushed me into this work. And it's something that really sustains me.
Good. Very good. Yeah. Is there any question I didn't ask you that you hoped you'd be asked today?
Man, I would say, Adam, man, you're pretty good at your job, man. I think you hit all the points from my perspective. So I think we had a lot of great conversations today.
Awesome. Yeah, it was great to have you. Yeah. Thank you for the time and the space, and just continue to be the man you are.
Yeah, thank you.
You inspire me and all of our colleagues.
Yeah, and you inspire me as well. So yeah, let's keep it going.
Okay. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Counter Stories, the MCSR podcast. For more about our work to create cultures free from violence, visit mcsr.org. Until next time, I'm your host, Adam Middleton. Thanks for listening.